No, I will not mute my microphone. Hey, good morning. Welcome to Office Hours. Today, Wednesday, the 4th of February, we're talking about audio stuff primarily. In this half hour, we're going to be talking about USB cables and what microphones to take to space and all kinds of stuff like that. So Alexander has some questions to read. Alexander, what's first?
First up is from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. Has anyone looked at the Linus Tech Tools new USB cables? They look very high spec.
Jeff Cohen.
I took a quick look at it, and you know he walks you through a lot of the durability of it, and that's great. You want it to be durable, but I watched a video recently, and I'm showing a little bit of it on screen now. Adam Savage, a look inside Apple's $130 USB cable. And what's interesting is not just the durability, but they take a LumaScan of it, and they walk through different cables, comparing that one to the cheapest ones or middle tier like Amazon Basics, and then the really cheapest of cheap. And it is amazing. You know, they look at just the soldering quality. There's pins that are just not connected to anything on some of these cables. So it's really amazing. I didn't see much of that discussion at a quick glance with his. So I'm sure they're good, but it's really the guts, the chips, everything else that really define the quality, not just how durable it is on the outside.
Alexander?
The USB spec is just an utter mess. I mean, you have the USB consortium that has designed a quote-unquote standard, but the problem is people can just manufacture whatever they want. So there's tons of junk out there, and even some quote-unquote reputable brands have had problems with cables, and they're never labeled properly. So I did watch this entire 15-minute video, and I did appreciate nerding out on the attention to detail and all the complaints that they had as people that also buy USB cables. And it's not only about price, it's really about the repeatability, the reliability for day-to-day use. And they showed you side by side a cutout of both their new cable and a lot of other manufacturers' cables. And Linus actually has a $10,000 cable testing machine. So they've actually put a lot of cables through the ringers. So I'm impressed with the build quality and what they were able to achieve with the design of this cable. A lot of thought has gone into it. It is not a cheap cable, but it's also still reasonably priced for what it is. And they claim that, you know, when it says 40 gigabits on the box, that's exactly what it does. And I like the fact that his cables are properly labeled as well. So I may need to get some and start throwing out all my other junky cables that I can't tell what they do because the cable doesn't say anything on it.
You're going to make him really happy. Alexander, do you get the impression that he is got a bunch of guys soldering these cables together, or did he just find a good manufacturer and he's putting his name
so he says
on
in the video they actually went through a lot of companies to find the right partner, and they would get batches of these cables from these partners. They would do these test runs, and they would find that they didn't live up to the specs. So they just kept going from company to company until they found one that was willing to work with them to get them to not only get the reliability, but right down to the choice of materials to get the flexibility, but also the reliability of the strain relief inside the connector as well. There's a lot. You really have to watch the video because there's a lot of detail in it.
I'll watch it. Courtney?
Yeah, the problem with USB-C has always been its multi-purpose goal in life, because that one connector is used for different signals. It's used for video, it's used for power, for charging, it's used for charging at 4 different voltages that it has to figure out which voltage to deliver, because if it delivers too high a voltage, it can deliver up to 20 volts. And if you're plugging into a phone that's looking for 5, if it doesn't sense that correct voltage and deliver that correct voltage, you're going to fry whatever you're trying to plug in to charge. Also, it handles video. It handles, in the case of the Apple cables where they had to do that X-ray on tested, it has to handle Thunderbolt, which is a much higher spec and a different type of signal and a different type of handshake. And so it has to have a chip inside that says, yes, I can handle Thunderbolt. So they differ depending upon one. It's all the same USB-C connector, and it can be connected either way, right side up, upside down. And so it has to have double the amount of connectors inside that little connector, double the amount of little tines in there that connect so that you could do it either way. And they're connected on both sides. My criticism, Linus Tech Tips used to be great for tech tips, and they're located in Canada up there with where Alexander is. And they do a great job. I really like the channel, but now they're starting to manufacture. They're starting to have another stream of income rather than just advertising on their channel. One thing, they're talking about durability of the cable. That's great. If you're paying more for that cable, you're instead of paying $2 or $3 on Amazon for the Amazon Basics, you're paying $20 or $15 or $20. If you look at the cross section of their cable, this is theirs on the left. It's got much larger insulation around those conductors on the inside and the outside than your standard USB cable here. And the problem with that is it makes the current cable much more durable, and it makes the strain relief much better, so the cable's not going to fail. But my criticism of that is that when you plug it into something, and it's something that you plug in and unplug a lot on the side of your laptop, let's say, the stronger and thicker the cable, the sooner it's going to break loose that female connector in your laptop from its motherboard. And once the solder joints crack on that, then it's going to become intermittent, and it's going to turn your $2,000 laptop into a paperweight for that, for a $12 savings on the cable. So there's things you have to think about when you're using that cable. How are you going to use it? Whether it's strong, whether you're going to be moving something around that's plugged into it that's going to cause strain on the connectors, etc. So think about besides the strength and the goodness of the cable, think of what it's going to do to your equipment.
I like it when you plug something into a cable and the cable is so stiff that it takes the thing that you plugged into it and it ends up flipping it over. Jason.
So LumaScan is very cool. It's basically photogrammetry, but done with X-rays in a 3D kind of a backscatter way. And their proprietary, like super fancy technology actually allows them to, that color that you see is basically how permeable it is to the X-rays. It is extremely cool. Okay, cables. Cables are really hard. You can't say thicker. I agree with Courtney. Thicker, ergo better, right? It is an incredibly hard balance and in a super hard mix. I've seen a little bit about cables in the last year. It's a really, really tricky thing to get right the first time. And, $10,000 cable testing, that is at least 10% better than a $9,000 cable testing machine. Okay, well done, guys. At the end of the day, I'm sure that they're great. And if they're a commercial success, I suppose that means they're worth what they cost. But you can't say this ergo that, especially not in the cable realm.
And next, who is it? Craig.
Yeah, part of putting this question and linking this video was because I think that the discussion in the video about how hard, as Jason was just saying, how hard it is to actually build cables to make them the spec that we're looking for these days is a very important understanding for people who are trying to work at this level. The other thing that I just want to point out was just Alexander touched on it briefly, but one of the things that they've done is that the ends of the cables are labeled in the molding, not only with what USB spec it is for data transfer, but also for power delivery. And they've got different versions for different levels of power delivery and spec, but it's all just right there for you to see. So that is something that I wish more manufacturers would follow and do as well.
Jason, wrap it up.
You reminded me of one thing that I forgot to say. This, well done, Linus. This drove me so nuts that I actually bought a laser engraver to engrave the edges and the ends of my cables because I could not get anything that wouldn't mess with every piece yeah.
Alexander, next question.
All right, next one's coming in from the QR code. Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington asks, what are the panel's thoughts on the latest news of an acquisition of DPA, Wisycom and Austrian audio by Audiotonix?
What do you think, Jason?
I think, time will tell. We'll know in 5 years. I think the road answer is actually the right one in this case, which is nobody wants DPA to go away. And Wisycom, I'm sure they're in distress. It's better that they are acquired, and hopefully they won't be ruined, by their new corporate overlords.
And Craig?
So one of the things that's interesting about this is, first of all, DPA had already made an investment into Austrian Audio to partner with them a little bit. So this just takes that another level. But if you look at the linked article, Audiotonix has a very large roster, as they say there, of other companies that are in their umbrella, which includes, sound devices and their wireless. So DPA makes their own wireless. Wisycom, of course, is wireless. Sound devices has their wireless. We're starting to get into a point where we've got these large conglomerates that have competing products within them. That's where I start to wonder about what's going to get dropped, how much autonomy any of these individual brands have under that large umbrella. So that would be my only real concern about this.
And Marty?
Yep, I have to go along with Craig. Audiotonix is a company that already owns 16 pretty major brands, including several very high-end console manufacturers, including Calrec and Digico, Solid State Logic, and Allen and Heath. Several processors like Clang and others. Group One is a rep firm that has several of these brands under them already. And so, yeah, they have multiple competing brands. How they plan to handle them going down the road, I mean, they've already owned these for a number of years. And so, historically, it doesn't look like they're trying to necessarily consolidate any of them or eliminate any of them, but how they manage them will become really important. To bring 4 more DPA, Wisycom, Austrian Audio under them is going to be a very interesting prospect to watch. I'm always concerned about these huge conglomerate consolidations where there are very few umbrella companies that own everything out there, and it virtually eliminates the competition and stifles new innovations because nobody can compete with them.
Alexander, next question.
This one is coming from the QR code. Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California. At the Blue Origin event this week, looks like they had 4 main mics to speak in, all pointed different directions. SecDef looks to wear 2 lavs, 1 up, 1 down. Podium has 2 gooses. How does this work, and why do they do this? Which mics are we really hearing?
It sounds like utter madness. Courtney, what's going on?
Well, it depends. They do the multiple mics. They have the 2 goosenecks usually pointed at 45 degrees to each other to give you a broader area if the person is wandering left, wandering right. If they're 2 cardioid pickups, it broadens the pattern to a wide area so that the person can lean left or lean right and still be in the pattern of one of the microphones. And then they're wearing a lav in case they wander away from the podium. Then you can't hear them. And sometimes, I don't know if they were doing this for this purpose, and I'm not sure if I found this. I'm not sure if this is the video they're talking about where there's a guy with a lav and 2 goosenecks for the arsenal of freedom. But the lavs are there in case they wander off. Sometimes there's 2 lavs for backup. Usually they will be mounted side by side, and they will be an omnidirectional lav. And in case one dies, because lavs have a tendency for their cables, which are very fine and die very easily, to go bad and break their shields, and you get kind of noise. And so it'll go to 2 different transmitters that they're wearing on their back, so that they've got a backup transmitter and a backup lav in case one of them goes south in the middle of a live show. You'll find this mainly on live newscasts and live shows or live speeches. If they've mounted one up and one down like this, it could be their cardioid and they're using it for noise cancellation, which would still mean that they have to have two transmitters in there. If they're in a noisy situation, like there's a rocket going off behind them or something, they might want to do that so you can still hear the person over an incredible amount of ambient noise coming from all directions. So they mix those two together out of phase with each other. So it cancels out the pattern of one sound coming at 180 degrees opposite the pattern of the other. Causes cancellation on noise that comes in from both directions, and the voice is only coming in from one direction. That's my guess. I haven't listened to the audio.
My guess, just as somebody who's mic'd a lot of people, would be that just because the sheer percentage of lavs that are cardioid or directional, it's very, very few. My guess is he likes the sound of pointing it up, but he has the down in case there's plosives. Just a thought. Marty, what do you think?
Yeah, all of that is actually very good answers and very plausible. You can have these multiple microphones that gives you options. If the presenter starts talking before he arrives at the podium or keeps talking after he leaves the podium or returns his head, you can have an auto mixer with all of these microphones into it, and that will automatically maintain the best quality audio with whatever microphone is picking them up best. Courtney made a very good point about the possibility of using two lavaliers in a noise canceling, phase canceling configuration, which will minimize background noise. If anybody remembers watching the first Grateful Dead movie, where they had the wall of sound speakers behind them, and all of the musicians had on their mic stands, they had two microphones right next to each other, one above the other, and they were used in a noise canceling situation because the sound from the big loudspeakers wall of sound behind them was so loud that they couldn't hear vocals, so they used those in a noise canceling configuration. Yeah, that's about it.
I was going to say, Courtney, I know that there's some sort of math about the double goosenecks. What is it? It's something like there's a percentage of the distance from the mouth and then how far apart they are just so they don't cancel each other out. Do you know what that is off the top of your head?
They don't cancel each other out if they're not 180 degrees out of phase, as I and Marty were talking about. But if they're at 90 degrees, they really won't. You're equidistant between both, and they'll sum correctly into a single level. But if you move more toward one or more toward the other, it balances out equally because it drops off on one and increases on the other. So if they're cardioid, that gives you, it just broadens that cardioid pattern to give you a more horizontal area that you can stay in and still find a sweet spot where it can pick up the sound correctly and pointing in opposite directions and spread apart a little bit.
Alexander, next question.
This question comes in from Harold Williams in Portsmouth. In our last meeting, we wanted to play background music while waiting for the meeting to start. Zoom canceled the music but kept the voice. How do I prevent this from happening?
I actually know the answer to this. It has to do with using original sound. Courtney.
Yes, indeed. Original sound from musicians. If you, go to your Zoom settings. Zoom has really good noise cancellation, and maybe I can demonstrate it. I'm using personalized sound for me, which takes the sample of my audio voice here, and down here it says personalized audio, which, and now if I play back some, sounds, I'm playing some music. I don't know if you can hear it now. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'll turn off that and go to original sound for musicians. And you should hear the music come back on. And the Jeopardy music should be playing in the background. So As I go back to my personalized audio, you should hear it go away, and it is still playing. Anyway, so there's a demonstration of how good that noise removal is. It keeps my voice, but can eliminate all those musicians playing in the background looking for their sweet, sweet residuals.
What's interesting to me most about the original sound thing, as an editor, I'm often playing timelines out to clients over Zoom, and it will remove the music that's embedded in the videos that I'm cutting and just let the dialogue through. So it's pretty amazing. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, two things. So first of all, what's great about that feature when you're doing that is not only does it cancel out the music pretty much, it also completely destroys your voice. So both are bad. So yes. Now the other thing, and maybe someone knows, so if you go to the apps, the Zoom apps, they have an app called Music. And I'm pretty sure, unless anyone correct me, I'm pretty sure that will not be affected even if you have original sound, or if you're using some of the noise cancellation. I don't think it will affect the music coming from that app. So you can use that to inject music in.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite features in the last, I guess it's a couple of years now, maybe only the last year, is that they finally made the original sound, whatever, for musician, whatever they call it this week, they made it a persistent setting. It used to be that literally every morning you'd have to dig through the menu, turn the thing on, blah, blah, blah. So that's now a persistent setting. Courtney?
And there is a difference. There's two choices on there. One is the default setting, which it now Zoom defaults to, which is noise reduction. And you can see it says it's the top setting here. And then there's personalized audio. The difference between, they're both noise reduction, but the personalized audio models your voice and you give it some samples and it keeps that model in. So it does less harm on the personalized audio than the default noise reduction. Default noise reduction will just figure out what it thinks is noise and what it thinks is your voice and apply that filter, which is, a multi-band change of compression. It changes in levels depending on the level of the noise in the band. Anyway, it's a very complex filter, but personalized actually models your voice and only lets those frequencies through that are from your voice, and even other people's voices it can filter out.
Muted.
And it's doing a great job of muting Chris Fedwick.
Right now it's muting Fedwick.
Noise removal.
My noise reduction was kind of severe there. It was called mute. Before we go on, Courtney, thanks for that. Remember, you can watch, a lot of people watch this show on YouTube. Thank you. Love that. But it's way more fun to watch it live. And when you watch it live, you want to be using our back-end Q&A system. It's called Mukana. It's very cool. And if you want to learn more about Mukana, go to officehours.global/whatever, poke around in there, /join, and you can get into the back-end Mukana system. It's a whole community of people. There's people chatting and trolling us and giving us a hard time about stuff. It's much more fun than just watching it on YouTube. So consider doing that. Alexander, let's go to the next question.
Next question's from the QR code Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California. How to avoid common AI pitfalls in the workplaces?
Mr. Cohen.
There's a couple things. First of all, depending on what tools you're using, Gemini, for example, for workplace, you have to know what your sources are. So there's pros and cons. You can set it to say, just use our stuff as the source. In other words, your shared drives and documents and all those good things, that's good for constraining what it's going to build reports from and everything else, but know that it is constrained to that. And then the other thing for anyone, I just remind folks to use it as a tool, but don't trust it blindly. Verify everything that it gives you. So I'm showing on screen here from a few months ago, California issues historic fine over lawyer's ChatGPT fabrications, because this lawyer filed a brief with the judge that, like any other good brief, cited case law, which was completely made up, completely fictitious. They didn't exist.
That's awesome.
Now, the judges, of course, are sensitive to this because they get a little lazy. And what they do when they issue their ruling is they use the citings from the lawyers in their verdict that they write up. And so then they look like dummies because they use it. So in other words, but I have this all the time, and it's a struggle to make these tools useful, but spending time verifying your results, which we are very much still in that period where you must do.
Hey, Jeff, so we're not legal experts, but we like to pretend that we are. I know that in the law world, precedent is a very important thing. If it has been ruled or done in the past, then we can apply it to the future. It makes it easier to move forward more rapidly. If a judge were to make a ruling based on fake laws, does that set precedent moving forward, or do we get to go back and call a mulligan and fix the mistakes of the past?
No, it sets precedent that that's a bad judge, and that's a problem for that judge on appeal because, when they look at judges, how many times have those judges' cases been reversed?
Interesting.
So it doesn't look good for anyone.
Jason?
Okay. ML-based large language models are really incredibly capable fuzzing. That is what they are. They are insanely good at it. To the degree to which it at times can be indistinguishable from normal. From what you would think and expect from a human. What it does and should do, at least in the foreseeable future, is ML, for example, can take a radiologist, a doctor who went to medical school and understands this, that, and the other, and make them better at being a doctor. What it cannot do is substitute for a radiologist. And Fenwick is saying ML-based, machine learning-based. I'm sorry, it's not AI, it's not intelligent, it's machine learning. Like, that's a distinction, and most people think it's a distinction without a difference. I will die on that hill. Like, it just isn't. I'm sorry, this is not Skynet, this is fuzzing. It is fuzzing, and if it's going to fuzz a judge, okay, so be it. But this is used to take expertise and make it more efficient and more effective. It is not the origin or the genesis of expertise.
Who's next? I'm on a different screen. I'm prompting Jason in the background. Courtney, what's your thought?
Okay. As far as AI pitfalls, it depends on what kind of pits you're afraid of falling in and how you're using AI. Are you worried about AI taking your job? Are you worried about you using AI and being discovered for it and losing your job that way? Two different ways to have AI affect your employment situation. One thing is that was pointed out is you should always check. If you're going to use AI as a tool, there are a couple of things to remember. That AI will gleefully go about doing what you request of it. And if you say, if there's a long thing you want to summarize, or if there's something you want to explain in a more authoritative way, you can tell AI, take this, answer this question. But if you say, and give me 3 pages on your answer, if you give it a length to go to, and there's not that much information, it'll make up enough stuff to fill that length, and it either may make it up or it'll just repeat the same facts over and over in a slightly different way. And so that's a tell that something has been AI generated. If it states the same facts over and over again in a 1-page report that could have been 3 paragraphs. So you have to read and see what it's turning out and make sure it's not repetitive, because that's going to be, the boss is going to go, oh, right, this came right out of GPT, you're fired. So you got to be careful about how, and the hallucinations of the other thing. It can also make stuff up that is and present it in a really factual way that is completely wrong. So you got to always proofread everything, make sure it's not repeating itself. I see these all the time on these 30-minute AI slop videos that are all over YouTube. They take, they cover some movie star's life, and it repeats the same 5 facts about that movie star about 7 times to fill it out to 30 minutes. So easy to tell.
Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit off the rails here for a second. I apologize to the back-end crew. Open discussion, but I want the responses to the questions I asked to be super short. I'm going to just go to Jason at first. I personally, I've been hearing, because I'm not glued to this stuff as closely as many of the panelists here. Jason, in a sentence, what is the story behind ClaudeBot, MultBot, etc. bot? What is going on with all of that stuff right now?
They're just forks of kind of the same origin, of the same kind of cluster of things.
Okay. And have you heard all of the stories? I'm just going to say stories is probably a better word, about like all the crazy things that this stuff has done. Like I read one story about a guy who on Friday night, a DoorDash showed up at his door, and his ClaudeBot, whatever his MultBot, had ordered him food for the weekend so he could stay home and be more efficient. Or the guy who couldn't turn his off, it had locked him out of admin privileges. And then after reading these things for a couple of days and genuinely getting concerned like an old man, I think I read something that said, "Oh, these are all fake."
Okay, so let me try to summarize there.
Sure.
The agony and the ecstasy, I'm shocked and never believe what you read or what you see or what you hear.
That's why I'm asking you.
You basically just kind of went full circle there. It is a terrible idea to take something, let it loose. These are the power, keep in mind, I am not an antagonist here. I'm trying really hard to just be accurate. These are the power of gods, and we're using them to fuzz the way into being able to not have to send, iMessage to get off, the couch to use our computer. That is a terrible idea, straight up.
I've been saying this since 2020 with everybody getting all excited about it. I've seen all the Terminator movies. It doesn't end well.
Oh, okay. You just defeated everything I said.
No, I'm just saying, if these things are doing stuff that the owner doesn't want it to do, is that not a problem?
The people who invent the people who invent and maintain these ML-based models do not understand precisely how these things are fuzzing. You understand that? So, nobody can understand it.
Can you define fuzzing for me? Like I'm fuzz.
I'm using
heard this term.
I'm using this colloquially. If you are an engineer and you want to understand how a circuit is working, you can put fuzz through it and basically try to derive out what's going on. You can also do the same thing in an algorithm if you're a programmer. That's the origin of the term.
Does anybody else want to get in on this?
Well, and I'll say, the common use of the fuzzing part is the generative AI piece. So in other words, like Courtney talked about writing, a lot of people use it for writing and almost exclusively for writing. I will say I almost never use it for writing. There are lots of other great uses. And also as an advocate of it, it's obviously great at coding. It still creates problems. It's great at image editing, image creation. But one of the other common pitfalls is lazy or inexperienced prompting. So like many things, garbage in, garbage out. You give it a super vague or poorly worded prompt where you're not really clear about what you want, you're not going to get a great result. The more specific you are, or at least clear in your intentions, the better likelihood of a good result. Now, Chris, what you're talking about is some of the agentic stuff, these agents. And
yes,
this is a big deal. So Claude has Cowork, which you can install on your computer. And there's a browser component where it can kind of control the browser on your computer for you.
What could possibly go wrong? Sorry.
And in the category of what could go wrong, you can give it access to your file system. So there's some demonstrations of, hey, I have one of those classic messy desktops where I have 150 icons and folders all over there. Hey, clean that up for me. And now, of course, in the example, it did a phenomenal job of actually image recognition. So just based purely on the content of the image, it tagged and labeled file names and organized the folders. But yes, I'm not giving carte blanche to my file system. I will say Google Workspace, again, they have Workspace Studio where you can create what they call flows, but these agents. And if you have access to Workspace Studio, I would encourage you to play around with it, because you can create these agents, and I have a number of them just running and doing things now. And in constructing them, you have some kind of classic automation objects in there, as well as just Gemini, let it do things. And again, they can go horribly wrong and just not do what you want them to do, or you can get them to do some pretty cool stuff. So this agentic world, I'm a big fan of, if crafted correctly, where these things are doing the mundane things that you don't want to do routinely.
Yeah, I made an agent the other day. I called it Mr. Smith, and it did not go well. Courtney, you were bouncing off your frame. What did you want to add?
No, I was just going to mention the agentic, which is different, and you can control. There are controls over a lot of this stuff. It depends on how much power you want to give that agent. Just like a Hollywood executive who hires their personal assistant to take care of a lot of stuff and fend off a lot of the people that want to contact him. And if you give that person who acts as your agent enough power to decline offers or take offers for you, you're going to have to suffer with how much they end up passing along to you or not passing along to you or rejecting for you. So the same thing can happen with agentic AI. You give it a certain amount of power to make decisions, and you can sometimes, there's a little slider in there, and how much fuzziness, how much fuzzy logic do you want that agent to use in making that decision? And they can be very straight-laced and like, you always turn down offers to go to Epstein Island. But, if you put the fuzzy logic in there, maybe every 10th time you get that offer, it's going to accept. So you got to be careful. And there are sliders and there are controls over agentic AI and how much power you want to hand off to that agent. And, you're going to maybe suffer the consequences, because it's going to do things, a whole lot of things that are going to escape your attention and do it a whole lot faster than you would be able to deal with those things.
Jason, as long as you don't yell at me, I'll let you talk one more time. Go ahead.
There's no substitute for good judgment. Never attribute brilliance to something that could be more easily attributed to idiocy or laziness. And the highest chess since the 90s, the highest level of chess in the world is not computer versus computer. It's not human versus computer. It's computer-human teams.
Okay. Let's see. I'm supposed to give another announcement, and I'm going to be honest with you. I can't remember what it is. It's something about, if you want to volunteer, if you want to get involved, like help, you'd be shocked watching this show how many people you don't see on camera. There's a lot of people working on it, and they all do an amazing job. I am eternally grateful and thankful for their diligence that they all put into it. Well, most of you. And if you want to get involved in that, again, go to officehours.global/ say join or volunteer or something like that. And you can sign up to participate. And even if you don't want to commit away your life to working on this, I think they'll let you come and sort of observe, and you can see how the whole back end works. It's quite fascinating. Alexander, next question.
This one's coming from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. The new OBSBOT Tiny 3 is out. Anyone have one? Seems expensive for a webcam, even one that does PTZ.
I'm going to tell you, none of us have one. I'm using an OBSBOT. I don't think it's the Tiny. It's the one that has the little left-right gimbal. This is what the old one looks like. We don't know. Let's go to the next question.
All right. Next one is from Rajan Chandel in Los Angeles. Is anyone on the panel using the Cedar plugin or Cedar analog gear?
Jason?
I have in the past, but never on the panel. It's extremely expensive, and noise assist is really, really good on the MixPre.
Alexander?
I'm not currently using it at the moment, but I'm familiar with the plugin. So if you have a universal audio interface, the Apollo series, I know Bill Davis uses the Apollo Solo interface with that plugin, and actually they license that technology. So the C-Suite, I think it's called C-Vox, that's the vocal plugin. So that uses the Cedar technology, and it works incredibly well. And despite some arguments from certain people, as far as I'm concerned, it's better than Noise Assist.
Oh, it is. It's just more expensive.
And to be clear, the Cedar plugin that we're talking about is noise cancellation. It's not the auto mixer.
It's not an auto mixer. It is a broadband noise reduction. Yeah,
okay.
It separates background noise from human voice.
Courtney?
Yeah, I wouldn't use it. It is a high-end noise removal. It's designed for use in post-production rather than live, I think. Most people use it for post-production situation where you want to tweak it and tune it and get it so it gets the noise, but it doesn't affect affects the voice or whatever your wanted sounds are as least as possible. So that's why I don't use it. I'll just trust the Zoom personalized audio because that does a decent job of removing background noises like the garbage trucks going by and things like that. You don't have to listen to it and tweak it, and it does it by itself. And my voice comes through clear enough to be heard on the panel, which is probably annoying to everybody.
No, not at all. Alexander, why don't you read and answer the next question?
This question's from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. Zoom noise gating, Rodecaster Duo via USB-C to Dell, Windows 11, BPHS1 mic via XLR, Zoom set main stereo mix, original sound on, Zoom test speaker plays, then attenuates, mic's clip at first, processing off on Rodecaster and PC, doesn't happen on a Mac.
Did you follow all that?
Let's think about this for a second. There's a lot in there. I'm not sure what the Panasonic camera has to do with it, but so one of the things you're going to want to do, first of all, is ensure in your Zoom settings that you have this setting on. So you want original sound for musicians check. You want high fidelity music mode check. You don't necessarily need stereo audio checked unless you're actually going to be playing music for just speech. Mono is just fine. Now, once you do that, the next thing you're going to want to do is when you actually start a meeting, this is something people miss all the time, is you're going to want to make sure that you also have original sound for musicians turned on inside the actual meeting. Now, you will see when you open a meeting, and thankfully in recent updates they fixed this. This will now be sticky when you turn this on, because Zoom assumes if you turn this on, you probably know what you're doing. You probably want this feature to be on every time you start a meeting. So you'll see this little badge at the top right-hand corner, and as of today, it is currently in the top right corner, but Zoom makes UI changes all the time, so who knows if this is going to stay. But it's at the top right corner, original sound for musicians on. If you've done that,
it might be different
and you still have problems, then you've got something else going on in your setup. You're going to want to also make sure, I'm assuming the mic is going into the Rodecaster, that's your audio chain. Check your gain staging, make sure that you've given yourself ample headroom. You probably want at least 10 dB of headroom. Don't go above negative 12 dBFS on the console. Look at the audio meters as well. Make sure that when you are talking loudly that you've got lots of headroom and you're not hearing any clipping in your monitoring.
I'm just going to point out the last sentence. Can you read that last sentence one more time, Alexander?
Doesn't happen on a Mac. Yeah, that's weird.
Okay, Jeff?
That I don't know.
Mr. Cohen?
So the one thing I hoped Alexander was going to show is there was one more setting in there, which is under the microphone setting, automatically adjust microphone volume.
Oh, yeah.
You want to make sure that that is not turned on because that wreaks havoc with almost everyone. Now, I don't know, by the way, we kind of glanced over the very first sentence in the question, Zoom noise gating, but then original sound on. I don't know how you do both of those at the same time. So if you have original sound on, and like Alexander pointed out, you've verified that it is in fact on in the meeting itself, and then it should be persistent. Now, I will say, depending on, obviously have enough detail to know how the Mac is set up. I intentionally use aggregated audio devices on the Mac to make sure that nothing can automatically adjust the microphone volume, because even if you have that set in Zoom and then you go and use something else like Google Meet, which is browser based, I mean, Chrome has its own settings for that, which are buried in like the advanced settings you need to get to through the URL and know where that is. There's a setting actually to prevent it from adjusting the volume on any mic that will let it. So on the Mac, I intentionally put the microphone in an aggregate audio group, which then does not have any volume control. So even if you put a mic in it that can be adjusted, it will no longer be adjusted with that aggregate audio group.
So Jeff, are you saying that typically, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, aggregate audio device means a bunch of things gang together. You're saying you put one thing using the aggregate audio building device functionality. Yes. It just has one thing just so that one thing doesn't have a gain control that the software can fiddle with.
Right, because now the mic that I select in all my software is not the actual mic, it's that named aggregate audio device.
It's like a virtual audio device that has one microphone. That's a clever way.
But it doesn't have volume control.
Yeah. Jason?
All right, so first two people who answered this question are way more qualified than me. My immediate thought here is, first, you cannot ever rule out gain staging. There's definitely some gain staging that's wrong here. But I'm curious what Jeff and Alexander think about. This could possibly be an ASIO direct sound, one of the oddities in the way that the Windows kind of sound setup can kind of jump between the two when you do some strange things. That's what leapt out at me.
Yeah, I would say, and Alexander, I'll get you. I mean, I only kid about the Mac thing, but mainly because Courtney's here, and one day I will share a meal with him, and I'm worried. But it's possible that the Zoom settings in the Mac are set up differently than they are on the PC, and because, as we've pointed out a couple times now today, that some of those things are persistent controls, maybe they're just carried over on the Mac and they're not set up properly on your Dell Windows 11. Courtney and then Craig. I'm sorry, Alexander, then Craig.
Also, make sure that you have the latest ASIO drivers as well, and make sure dig into those settings as well. There might be something to do with buffer settings that you need to check. So it's always best to make sure that those drivers are properly installed and that you have the latest drivers.
Craig?
Yeah, I was just following along in the chat a little bit about this as well. And it looks like it might actually be happening in the Rode from what's being talked about. And I'm just wondering if there's different settings for controlling the Rode device between the two different computers. If there's something in the computer settings to control it, if that's what's causing a gate or something to be active in the Rode.
Yeah, it's a good point. And again, so like maybe they set up the Rode on the Mac, but not on the Windows machine. Anyway, take a look at it. Let's move on to the next question.
This one's coming from JB Windle in Chiang Mai, Thailand. What guidance does the panel have for safely powering Blackmagic Micro Converters over USB-C? I may have damaged 2 units by using a multi-port USB charger that wasn't suitable.
Jason?
If you think you did, you definitely did. So that's my first piece of guidance. Second piece is, if you don't want to have to buy them again, call Blackmagic, tell them what you think you did, and again, I can't speak for them, but in my experience, they will be pretty understanding about that, especially unless this is the 20th time you've fried something. And last but not least, as long as you're using one-to-one kind of powers, I personally have powered many of these at a time, with a multi-out. But keep in mind, amperage times voltage is wattage, and you can't just split it. It's not how they work.
Courtney?
Yeah, there's a problem with USB-C. It used to be that all those mini converters had USB mini micro USB on it. Which is only designed for a single voltage, which is 5 volts. And if you look at the specs on the mini converters, their operational voltage range is 4.4 volts to 5.25. And that's a fairly narrow voltage range for its operation. And the problem with USB-C is, other than USB Micro was 5 volts standard, which is perfectly in that range. And so the old ones you could use, just plug them in, you didn't have to worry about them. USB-C can deliver 4 different types of voltages, from 5.5 on the minimum, 5.5, I think 7, 12, and 20. Or maybe 9, 12, and 20. Those are the 4 main voltages that can be delivered over USB-C. So USB-C has to have, if it says PD on it, it means it can automatically switch to the voltage that's required. Well, unfortunately, if they just change that from a mini on the Blackmagic little boxes, if they just change the connector from an old USB Micro to a USB-C, and they didn't put the chips in that says, am I a host? Am I a client? What voltage do you require? Here's the right voltage. If they didn't do that, your supplier can supply the wrong voltage, like 20 volts, to that little box, and it's going to fry it. This is why in the instructions it says, always use the power supply provided with the box, because that will deliver the correct voltage, even if it's fixed and doesn't automatically select. They will deliver that little wall wart that delivers the correct voltage of 5 volts for that little box. So you want to be careful about using somebody else's USB-C power source because it may deliver the wrong voltage to that little box.
Alexander.
I'm actually I'm into this now because I'm building a new studio, and I need to convert all the cameras from HDMI to SDI. Because I have to do long cable runs. It's interesting. I looked into these Blackmagic converters because these are on my shopping list, but they don't say that you can't use a USB multi-port charger. So maybe you just had a bad one. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but you always want to make sure you use a good name brand multi-port charger. If you're going to do that, quality of the cables matter too. It could be a freak thing. I mean, it's hard to say if it's exactly caused by this particular thing. Now, these Blackmagic Micro Converters, they sell them without a power supply, and Blackmagic says, I was just looking at this the other day, that it just needs 5 volts. So in theory, you should be able to plug it into either a single port charger or a multi-port charger. It should work fine. So I would probably reach out to Blackmagic about that.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Hazmat Gajar in Cape Town. Switched from ATEM Extreme HDMI to the 2ME SDI. Missed the ISO recordings. HyperDeck option is expensive. Thinking of getting ATEM SDI Pro to record at least 4 outputs from 2ME. Thoughts?
What are your thoughts, Jason?
Expensive is a relative term. I'm going to give you one way that should work, that everyone here is going to tell you is a terrible idea, but it would work. If you are using 1080p all the way through, I will remind you that 1080p is actually, if you take a frame of 4K and quadrant it out, 1080, 1080, 1080, 1080, you can actually just get a single HyperDeck and have all 4 inputs if you're willing to split them. Probably a bad idea, not the same thing as an ISO recording.
That's a good idea. Why is that a bad idea? I think that's a great idea. Super clever.
Well, it adds some steps, and again, once it's recording. But yep, it's just a matter of how much you love your money. But my thoughts are, if you're going to go with SDI, I've never used the tiny ATEM SDI, but I did have in my earlier studio. In fact, it's in the back room. The full-sized SDI Blackmagic switchers are spectacular. So if you like it, absolutely use it. And yeah, I guess Fenwick's backing me up on the quadrant thing. I
think it's a great idea, Hosmuk. If you're just doing 1080, it's just 4 frames. It's 1/4 of an Ultra HD signal. I think it's a good idea. Next question.
This one's coming from Rajan Chandel in Los Angeles. The audio on YouTube videos recorded on iPhones in tricky and hostile situations, kicked off planes and police stops, seems way too high quality versus when I film with no mic in daily life. How are these videos achieving broadcast levels?
Go ahead, Jeff Cohen. I think what Rajan is trying to say here is that some of these videos might be faked. Anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, and so anyone stop me if you're interpreting this differently than I am. What I am interpreting this as, he's seeing videos on YouTube from other folks of
That's what I'm
these
reading,
instances and comparing that to the raw video and audio he has on his phone. And so that's not an apples to apples comparison, because what you're comparing is the edited video, or that's been run through simple noise reduction and, processing, even just natively uploaded to TikTok, folks using CapCut, or a lot of times you're watching these videos on a reaction, so it's a more advanced content creator who's watching or just stealing that video, so they have run it through in their editing process. So you're likely not hearing the actual audio. You're hearing processed noise reduction, everything else, final products, and comparing it to your raw audio.
It also, I'm going to jump in here a little. It's also possible, Raj, that your mind is two things. One, your mind is filling in the blanks. Very, very possible. Also, the types of things you're talking about, people are yelling and screaming, so maybe it's just really loud and picking it up well, like from across the plane or, whatever. Marty and Courtney.
That's actually true. Well, there's a lot of truth to both of those, but Jeff brings up a really good point that there's some really, really good processing software that can be used in post-production to reduce background noise, to enhance speech, to
I don't think listen, hold on. I don't think
You know-
people posting airplane videos are running through a bunch of post-processing. They're just drunks on a plane and posting their
but
stuff
it's
on
really, really easy to do. Even phones these days have audio enhancement built into them that will reduce noise and enhance speech. And it depends on the device you're using, the particular model phone. And some phones have more processing power in them than others. And even my Android phone has microphone steering in it. I can steer the microphones to the front or to the back, or I can have it pick up everything. It's depending on how you use it and the features that you're looking at inside your device. And, if they're not posting these things live, if they're bringing them back, if they're frequent YouTube posters, chances are they are doing some post-production enhancing. They're doing some editing on them for sure. You're not seeing the entire video, right?
Yeah, Courtney, quickly, we're running out of time.
Marty touched on it. It's a steering. Most modern cell phones. So if you've got an old iPhone that just has a single mic designed for picking up, phone calls. Remember those things? Phone calls, used to call somebody. Modern phones have a microphone in the front that's designed for phone calls, and they have a microphone in the back for noise cancellation and for shooting videos. And it steers whichever microphone is getting more audio in, it will steer to that microphone, and it'll attenuate the other microphone for noise cancellation, or it'll mix a combination of the two to give you a more directional pickup. So if you have an old phone that only has one mic, that may be why yours sounds crummy and the other people's that are on YouTube sound good. Also, post-processing was mentioned earlier. YouTube will post-process to remove unwanted noise and to clarify the voices on the sound. So it could be either one of those things.
I'm with Raj. I think they're all fake. Let's go to the next question.
This one's from Hazmat Gajar in Cape Town. I'm setting up a new workflow trying to understand what the Dante AVO or AVIO analog output adapter, what is it and how does it fit into a workflow?
I want to stress we're running out of time. Quickly, Jason.
Here's what it is. It is a Dante going in, and on the outs, it is XLR. So on my Dante rig, for example, I've got a mic going in, and if it was going out to, for example, the speakers behind me, I would plug this in, and that's what it's for.
It looks like master control. It looks like you're going to the moon. Marty.
Yeah, the AVIO adapters are very, very handy devices to get analog gear onto a Dante network. You can get them for analog inputs. You can get them for analog outputs. You can get them with USB-C or A connectors on them to put your laptop on the network without using the Dante virtual sound card.
And I want to stress that, and I don't know anything about Dante except this. You have to have at least one physical Dante thing on your Dante network. And Craig?
Yeah, I just wanted to carry on with the fact that it's the one specifically that he's talking about is a 2-channel line level output. Just to be clear that it's just line level, and of course within Dante, those two can be patched to be anything, any 2 outputs. It doesn't have to be a stereo setup. It's just 2 output ports from Dante.
Let's go to the next question.
This question is coming from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Assuming the room is acoustically treated and using a mic like an SM7B, what is the optimal mic placement to capture dialogue? Quickly, Marty.
All right. Well, if the room is well treated, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference where you put the microphone in the room. What might make more of a difference is how you configure your desktop and what else is on it. You want to be careful not to have video monitors in front of you that's going to reflect your voice back into the microphone. In a well-treated room, that is probably the most significant source of reflections that could hurt your audio. But generally speaking, you want to have your microphone in a place, a location in a room where reflections are going to be minimized. And that's the whole point of treating the room in the first place.
I want to remind everybody at the beginning of the show, off air, I asked the panel, if you were going to choose one person that you never check their mic again, we all voted on Courtney. So Courtney, where's the best place to put an SM7B in front of somebody's face?
SM7B is a dynamic microphone, which means it needs a lot of vocal energy to drive that mechanical diaphragm because it's got a coil attached to it. So you need to, it's designed, that microphone was designed for radio work where it doesn't matter if it's in the shot and or podcasting. So you want it a couple of inches away from your microphone. You want to make sure you have the pop filter on it so the plosives aren't hitting it because it's going to be pretty close to your mic, to your mouth. You want to have it up a little bit, and it's going to be in the shot because to get a good signal level out of that microphone, it needs to be about 3 or 4 inches from your mouth and preferably directly in front of it. But, that kind of blocks your face. So, you always want to see this beautiful face. But anyway, a couple of inches away from your mouth to get enough signal level into that to move that diaphragm. And you don't have to worry about too much of the acoustics. That's one thing that microphone is good at because the bounces off the wall are going to be such a low level, they're not going to move that diaphragm near as much as your voice is moving it. So it'll by its the physics of that capsule, it's going to filter out a lot of reflections automatically.
Thank you, Courtney. You have just witnessed episode 2143 of Office Hours. Again, I want to stress, go to officehours.global. You can see the schedule for when all the shows are. I would highly recommend you join us live. Check the schedule, figure it out. Join the Mukana thing, the back end. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. That's why we're here. Anyway, had we traveled around the world and gotten all these questions answered, it would have taken us 44,000 miles, which seems ridiculous. That's a bunch of kilometers. And apparently that's 351 bananas. Thank you, Vienna, for bringing bananas into our life. That's it for Office Hours. Roll the credits. We have to go. Bye.
Reason 357,000, not to go off what you see on YouTube. You folks have probably seen the podcasters holding the SM7, in their hand, holding the stem of the mount and walking around and just holding that mic.
But it is close enough to their mic, to their mouth.
I guess they're achieving that.
Yeah.
It really seems like the SM7B got super popular during COVID.
Not just podcasters. I've seen, who was it that I saw? It was
radio.
Brian. I saw a behind-the-scenes studios thing of Brian Johnson from AC/DC in a recording studio, and he's got the SM7B in his hand, and he's singing into it. Weird, but okay.
Well, it has the same capsule as the SM58, which they're used to holding in their hand.